Hello, Conrad and Lucy and Caleb. Iron Man is back here looking over Spider-Man's shoulder, looking over my shoulder, and we're all looking at Iron Man's new opponent, the Melter. I want to remind you to remember a long way back. You've actually seen the Melter before. He was part of the many villains that attacked the Fantastic Four on the day of Reed and Sue's wedding. That was a long time ago, so I really don't expect you to remember, but I remember that he was part of that crew and he hadn't been introduced to you yet, but this is his introduction to the Marvel Comics. And so let's see what he is all about. All right, this is a special super issue with Iron Man greater, more true to life than ever as he battles the mysterious Melter. All right, and you can see from the front cover that Iron Man is flying away while the Melter is using his ray power to melt the armor off of Iron Man. Iron Man asks himself, how can I fight a super foe who has the power to melt my iron armor within seconds? And the Melter says, no matter where you flee, I shall find you and destroy you. Well, here's another little teaser episode with the question, how can a man of iron save himself from a supervillain with the power to melt iron? All right, so let's get into the story and find out. We're going to start a little earlier than the Melter's introduction. The editor says, let's not waste time with long introductions. Let's start with the coming of the Melter. The first evidence of his power is seen when the army tanks fall apart during maneuvers before the very eyes of the high brass and visiting congressmen. Our tanks, what's happening to them? Look, they're falling apart. General, look. And the military men and the congressmen, they're worried. The points of stress of both tanks have been weakened to the breaking point. Incredible, says the general. It's almost as though every vital joint has been melted. The news quickly reaches the famous young industrialist whose plant built the tanks, and Anthony Stark personally begins to inspect the vital parts of his weapons components. He says to himself, the iron in those tanks couldn't have been defective. I buy the best quality. I pay the highest prices, and yet, but everything here seems a-okay. Suddenly, oh, from behind, he gets knocked out by the Melter, who says, I knew you'd show up sooner or later, Stark. Now to apply my short-range melting ray to this new shipment of Stark's war materials. This will slow up the Army's defense effort and cost Stark a fortune. Thus I accomplish my two objectives. I strike back at the U.S. Armed Forces and get revenge on my old rival, Tony Stark. All right, so the Melter in his secret identity was a competitor to Stark. He takes off his mask, and so we see him. He says, by the time he wakes up, I'll be gone. Too bad he'll never know who I really am. He'll never suspect that the Melter is really his former competitor, Bruno Horgan. Never heard of him, but I bet Stark has heard of him. Bruno Horgan, alias the Melter, smugly thinks back to the time of his last meeting with Tony Stark. All right, so this is a flashback memory. This man says, Horgan, Stark's report shows that your factory has been using inferior materials. Therefore, we are revoking your Army contract and ordering Stark's company to build our tanks. Horgan is angry. He says, I'll get my revenge. Stark will pay for this. Stark shouldn't have to pay for it. Horgan should just pay for better materials, right? But he didn't. He tried to be cheap and take shortcuts, and he's losing out on money. Then the melter remembers how he accidentally discovered his secret of dissolving iron. One of the electronic testing devices in his laboratory, built of inferior parts, had gone haywire, and he sees that inspection beam is affecting the iron units it's shining on. It's making them melt. But how? What a powerful beam that can melt metal. Studying the device alone in his lab, Horgan finds the source of its power and manages to fit it into a small, compact unit. This is sensational, he says. My melting beam will dissolve iron like flame melts butter. What a discovery! Iron is the most important metal on Earth. By being able to melt it at will, I become the most powerful man in the world. I must plan carefully. I must use my power to destroy my enemies and to make me supreme. It's too bad he didn't think of ways to use the melting beam for good. Nope, but he wants to use it for bad. After days of secret work, look, he's got a new outfit with the melter beam attached to his chest. He says, this portable beam makes me invincible. No one can dare defy me. With a mask to conceal my identity, I can plunder at will. The very sight of me will strike fear into the hearts of men. No weapon can menace me, for I can melt them all. In fact, the world will soon come to know me as the Melter. Not a very ingenious name, but nonetheless, it works. And now, back to our story. We again pick up the threads of our gripping tale as the Melter prepares his next move. I will not finish you off now, Stark. That would be too merciful. I prefer you to live so that I can toy with you some more, so that I can steadily defeat you at every turn. Meanwhile, inside Anthony Stark's suite of executive offices, we find Pepper and Happy. Pepper says, Happy, would you find Mr. Stark and tell him I have some reports for him to sign? Look, doll, retorts Happy, I'm his ever-loving chauffeur, not a bloodhound, but if you can bear to have me take my lovable self away for a minute, I guess I can do it. What a gal. I know she's nuts about me, if only she knew it. But when he looks for Stark, hey, Mr. Stark, what happened, boss? He finds him on the ground. And he thinks, the blow weakened me. There's a pain in my chest. I must recharge fast. To Happy, he says, I tripped and fell. Help me to my office, Happy. Pepper says, you look pale, Mr. Stark. Something's wrong, I know it. Please, let me call a doctor. That would be smart, wouldn't it? But although Stark is really a very smart inventor, he's not very smart about his health. He says, no, Pepper, I'll be all right. I just want to be alone in here. To rest. No doctor, that's an order. If a doctor ever discovered this life-giving chest plate I wear, my secret would be out. How could I explain to Pepper and Happy that all I need to do is recharge my transistor batteries to regain my stamina? Ah, as he plugs in his cord, I can feel the strength surging back. Another few minutes might have been too late. Meanwhile, in another part of Stark's vast munitions factory, we find the Melter thinking, how easy it is for me to melt any lock. Now that I've gained access to Stark's power plant, I can put his entire factory out of operation with one stroke. But the Melter overlooks Anthony Stark's protective alarms. An urgent signal flashes on the munitions maker's wall, and Stark realizes someone has broken into the power plant. Without a second's hesitation, Stark opens a locked attaché case and takes out the component parts of his flexible Iron Man costume. He says whatever must be done can be done better by Iron Man. Thundering down his secret underground passageway, the great golden gladiator races for the power plant. Good thing I made this tunnel soundproof. The thumping of my iron boots would be a dead giveaway if anyone should hear them. Clank, clank, thump, thump. And there's the melter up on top. He says now to begin melting Stark's generators. Without the power he needs, his whole factory will come to a standstill. There are 2 workers on the ground. Look, Charlie, who is it? How did he get up there? He's using some kind of energy beam, playing it on our generators. Holy cow, they're starting to melt. Let's go, we've got to alert the guards and warn Mr. Stark. Too late, nothing can stop him now. And the melter realizes another few seconds and Stark will be ruined. His entire generator, a melted slag of iron. But at that moment, the most impressive figure of all comes hurtling toward the masked melter. Drop that, mister, says Iron Man, or you'll wish you had. Iron Man, retorts the melter, I had heard you worked for Stark, but I thought it was just a rumor to frighten away saboteurs. Well, well, this is more than I dared hoped for. And so what do you think he's going to do next? He's got that melting beam that's going to attack Iron Man's armor. Once the world learns that the melter has defeated Iron Man, none will dare to oppose me, and so I shall turn my destructive beam on you. Good, thinks Iron Man. He swung his beam away from the generators. But what if it has the same effect on my armed suit? Iron Man, the pride of democracy, sneers the melter. Guardian of Stark's weapons works, defender of the weak and helpless. Ha! How easily the mighty can be defeated. And look, his beam melts away the iron in Iron Man's arm. His beam works. If he melts any more of my armor, my identity will be revealed, and worse, my chest plate will be destroyed. Before the slower moving melter can redirect his potent beam upward, Iron Man applies his emergency jets and streaks over the head of his startled foe. He thinks, I've got to get out of range. Good plan. Then with his transistor energy activators turned to full power, the mighty Mystery Man crashes desperately through the thickly insulated power plant wall. Just in time, Iron Man gets away. The melter thinks he's faster than I thought. Iron Man thinks, I've never faced such an enemy before. Who is he? Where did he get his power? And most important, how can I face him? How can I fight him when I dare not face him? Look, he's starting to lose some of the iron in his leg. Stark thinks, I used up too much power breaking through the wall. Have to slow down till my batteries recharge. These transistor magnets should keep the melter from reaching me now. What will he do with the magnets? Skillfully tossed toward the ceiling at just the right angle, the powerful magnets pulling in 2 different directions exert enough force to split the main steam pipe. He's outsmarted me, thinks the melter. Got to get away before I'm scalded. I've done enough damage for one day anyway. And so the steam pours down on top of the melter, makes him very hot and scalded, and so he's going to run away. And the Iron Man is going to escape. Now while I have the chance, I've got to change back to Tony Stark. Nothing more Iron Man can do without a battle plan. And a short time later, America's most famous munitions maker inspects the damage to his factory. He says, "We're lucky he was stopped in time. It can still be repaired. Have the men work around the clock, 3 shifts, triple pay. Get it fixed fast." "Yes, sir, Mr. Stark," says his foreman. And then in Stark's executive office, we've got people looking for his attention. These scientists say, "Mr. Stark, these blueprints need your okay." "We can't keep the congressman waiting much longer, Chief. They're anxious to see you." But Stark says, "I said cancel all appointments, all decisions, till further notice. I don't want to be disturbed for anything." Happy says, "I've never seen the boss look so worried, Pepper. I don't like it." Pepper says, "Neither does he, you big ape. He's always depended on Iron Man in a crisis, but now he's afraid even Iron Man can't save him from the melter." Then, after locking him in his private workshop, he thinks, "What do I do now? Iron Man is helpless against an enemy with the ability to melt iron, and yet without my other identity, I'm just an ordinary human, more vulnerable than most because my heart would stop without my chest plate. Face it, Stark, you're running scared." So Stark is trying to figure out what he can do to fight the melter. "I don't dare confront the melter again. As Iron Man, if he should destroy my iron helmet, revealing my identity, Tony Stark would be prey for every criminal who wants revenge on Iron Man." "What's the matter with me? I'm still not helpless. I've still got the greatest weapon in the world, a human brain. The brain that created Iron Man should be able to invent a defense against the melter." And I agree with Stark. The melter has only one power, but Tony Stark has many weapons at his disposal, and Iron Man also has many powers that he can use. So let's see how he manages to thwart the melter. "I've got to think," says Stark. "Got to find the answer, no matter how long it takes. For if the melter isn't stopped, no person, no community, no nation on Earth will be safe." And so the many-talented Anthony Stark locks himself away from the outside world as normal life goes on without him. Look, here is a beautiful Hollywood actress. She says, "But I had a date with Tony Stark. No one stands up the most famous name in Hollywood." Pepper says, "Sorry, Miss Glitter. Mr. Stark can't be disturbed for anyone." Happy thinks he'd like to step in. He says, "Man, wouldn't I like to pinch hit in that league?" "Yeah, Miss Glitter, if you want a date, Happy's available." But Pepper says, "Put your eyes back in your head, Happy. I thought you weren't interested in beautiful girls." "I'm not," says Happy. "I just like you." Oh, that was the wrong thing to say. Pepper says, "Well, look who's talking. The poor man's Bela Lugosi." Bela Lugosi is a classic actor who played monsters on screen. "For the love of Pete, now what did I say to make those pink eyes of yours flash?" Finally, the next morning, Stark says, "You two are here awfully early, aren't you?" Happy says, "To tell the truth, boss, we never left. I thought you might need us." "Yes, sir," says Pepper. He just walked in. She's talking on the phone. I'll tell him. Goodbye." "That was Washington, Mr. Stark. A special congressional committee wants to see you now." They sounded awfully grim. "I was afraid of that," answered Stark. "I'll have to go, of course." And then Happy says, "Should I get the Rolls or the Jag out of your garage, boss?" "Neither, Happy. I won't be driving." "Suffering cats, I never get to drive you anywhere. What do you need a chauffeur for anyway?" "Sorry, Happy," says Stark. "It's a long story, and I wouldn't want to bore you. Now wait here. I'll call if I need you." But but, Pepper says, you heard the man. And so Stark is leaving Happy and Pepper behind. I wonder if he doesn't like the way I drive. What would make you think that? Just because you crumple an average of one fender a week. But here's the real reason Anthony Stark insists on traveling to Washington alone. He's got on his jet skates. As Iron Man, I don't have to worry about traffic jams and flat tires. Lucky I had spare parts to my armor so I could replace those destroyed by the melter. Well, time to take to the air now. So he rolls along, and you know those rolling skates actually work as generators to charge up his heart. But now he's got enough energy to fly through the air. Within minutes after flying under cruising power, Iron Man reaches the outskirts of Washington, and there's the small cottage and garage I maintain for just such occasions. Then, after a quick change in one of his many strategically located, fully equipped secret cottages, Anthony Stark resumes the last few miles of his trip in a car. What a car! Wow, look at that sports car. And I'm impressed. I'd rather drive that than roll along on Iron Man skates. But he's not caring about the car. He's thinking, what a mess. The melter running loose and able to destroy Iron Man. My factory damaged, with still more trouble in store. And now an urgent summons to Washington. It can only mean a new, serious problem. Look, Joe, that was Tony Stark, the millionaire playboy, in that custom-built sports car which just went by. Joe says, yeah, nothing to do but cruise around all day in that $10,000 toy. I wish it only cost $10,000 today. Looking for things to spend his dough on, not a worry in the world. Boy, some guys sure have it made. Well, it looks like Tony Stark has it made, but we know he has some serious problems that are even worse than changing a flat tire. Finally, in the nation's capital, here we see the dome of the Capitol, and here's Washington Monument in the back. And here's a congressman saying, I tell you, Stark, we can no longer tolerate these accidents, not when our national defense is involved. All this nonsense a man you call the melter is just balderdash. Do you think you're talking to children, Stark? Your production has fallen off dangerously. Your tanks were found to be defective. What have you to say for yourself, man? It's too late for words, gentlemen, answers Stark. I'll have to bring you proof. I'll have to trap the melter. Because of your excellent past record, we are giving you one more chance. Either straighten out the trouble at your factory, or you'll lose every one of your government contracts. Do I make myself clear? And get rid of your strange obsession with the melter. He's just a hallucination. There's nothing imaginary about the melter, but Iron Man is the only one who's actually seen him, along with a couple of his workers. Pardon me, sir, says the secretary. A long-distance call was just received from Mr. Stark's Long Island factory. He's needed there immediately. They said it was an emergency. The congressman says, it better be something you can remedy, Stark, for your sake. I'll leave at once, Senator, says Stark. Before nightfall, a grim Tony Stark returns to the site of his plant in Flushing, Long Island. And his foreman says, we can't do anything with this melted iron, sir. It's all fused together. It'll take a week just to remove it. Till then, we can't produce a thing. And Stark realizes it's even worse than I thought. How depressing. What a problem. But he says, stay with it, Chuck. Do the best you can. I'll see if I can contact Iron Man. Perhaps he can help. Yes, sir, Mr. Stark, says Chuck. But then Chuck thinks, Iron Man, a fat lot of good he'll do if the melter shows up again. As far as I can see, Iron Man has had it. Once again, one of the world's most dramatic transformation takes place behind the locked doors of Stark's inner office. It's now or never, says Stark. I've got to find the Melter and defeat him somehow, or else watch my life's work go down the drain. But first, I'll tackle that fused power plant. And so Stark dons his Iron Man armor, and let's see what Iron Man can do. But even as Iron Man comes to life, two merciless eyes survey Stark's factory from a place of concealment. Up in a tree, the Melter has his binoculars and he says, I've succeeded. Stark is practically out of business, and now I can tackle even bigger projects. But then he sees Iron Man. I never dreamed he would dare to return. Well, of course, Iron Man dares anything. He's using his own transistor-powered strength and skill to repair the damage. He can move his iron limbs more skillfully than any Derek to clear away the rubble. I'll reach him before he can do Stark any good. And this time, I'll make sure I stop him permanently. And this iron link fence can't stop the Melter. He just melts the links away, walks right through the fence. Clear the plant, says a guard. It's a red alert. The Melter's been sighted again. Head for cover, Pepper, hollers Happy. I'll try to find the boss. You, asks Pepper. You couldn't find a tree in a forest. I'll get Mr. Stark. No telling where he is now. If the Melter finds him and traps him. Come back here, you dizzy dame, hollers Happy. At a time like this, you'd be as much help as a water gun during the Chicago fire. Boy, they really do like each other, don't they? Oh, Iron Man, look! There's Iron Man holding up a whole ton of melted iron. He asks, what is it, men? Allow me to answer that, my doomed foe. It is the Melter, the one you shall not escape from again. It had to happen sooner or later, answers Iron Man. This is the showdown, mister. And Happy says, now we're in for it. If the Melter beats Iron Man, we'd better all head for the hills. No wonder they call you Happy, says Pepper. You're just a born optimist. Well, let's see what happens. I bet Iron Man can take him this time. I'll start out, Iron Man, by giving you a small sample of what you're in for. See how easily I can melt the cast iron pipes over you, covering you with molten ore. It will take more than that to stop me this time, Melter, says Iron Man. I'm aware of that. I don't want to dispose of you completely yet. I enjoy toying you. For example, do you realize how ridiculous you look at this moment? And they call you the Golden Gladiator. Well, not after today, they won't. He doesn't look golden anymore. He looks as gray as he did in the very first Iron Man story. He says, enjoy it while you can, madman. My tiny jet blowers will dispose of this melted ore in seconds. And then, you dare threaten me, retorts Melter. Very well then, our little game is ended. This is your finish. Melter, answers Iron Man, you're as corny as a late show villain. I'll treasure those words, Iron Man, for they are destined to be the last you will ever utter. And so, farewell. So he reaches for his control panel. He sets his melter beam on full. But your armor, it isn't melting. Look, his beam is shining on Iron Man, but Iron Man just stands there and takes it. Anyone ever tell you that you have wonderful powers of observation? Yes, we can all observe that his melter beam isn't affecting Iron Man's armor. I have my beam set to highest intensity. It must melt your iron covering. It must. You had your chance, Melter, and now it's my turn. But why doesn't my ray affect you? Why? He's coming closer. I can't stop him. I can't escape. Wait, that iron crane overhead. It's my only chance. The trouble with you is you didn't do enough to quit while you were ahead. And now nothing. I'll melt that crane so the boulder falls and finishes you forever. So he turns his melting ray to the crane above. The fool, he miscalculated. But Pepper and Happy, they're under the boulder. They don't see it. They'll never get away in time. Watch out, Pepper and Happy. Here comes the boulder. But here comes Iron Man. Moving with the speed of thought, Iron Man activates his transistor-powered jets at the highest intensity, and then with less than a microsecond to spare, it's falling. If only I can be in time. If only. I got it. So he shoves the boulder. Happy shoves Pepper. He says, look out. Oh! You two stay out of harm's way. You two stay out of harm's way. For the last time, you two stay out of harm's way while I go after the melter. I saw him duck back into the plant. Whew, says Happy. Now there's one handy gent to have around, eh, Pepper? All of a sudden, Happy, that walking tin can is the handsomest male I've ever seen. And a scant few feet away, inside the huge factory, leaps the melter. I've got to stay out of Iron Man's reach till I can figure out why my melting beam had no effect on him. But despite the melter's head start, Iron Man knows every inch of the sprawling plant better than anyone. And so, minutes later, he appears and Iron Man says, flight is useless. We're on my home ground now. The melter hollers, you! And Iron Man thinks he doesn't know that I can control every automatic fire door in the factory by my transistorized belt panel. Melter says, I'm trapped. But I'm not beaten yet. If I can't destroy you, I'll melt the iron structure of the reinforced floor under you. So he melts the floor, but look, Iron Man, of course, can fly, and so he's just floating there. You're cracking up, my friend. Have you forgotten about my transistor-powered jet, which enable me to counteract the force of gravity? Blast you, hollers the melter. Is there no way to stop you? Perhaps there is, but you haven't discovered it yet. And now let's put an end to this little farce once for all. He ripped out a strip of iron flooring as if it were paper, thinks the melter. I've got to escape. He's unbeatable. I'll melt through this iron drain cover below me, and then, with luck, I can lose myself in the underground disposal system. I'd rather chance drowning than being caught by Iron Man. Then before Iron Man, whose power jets are now almost drained of energy, can reach the spot, all is silent and dark and still. And so it looks like the melter got away to threaten another day. It's mighty frustrating, thinks Iron Man. I can't be sure whether the melter drowned or escaped to menace me another time. For if he should ever return, I may not be able to trick him this way a second time. And of course, we know the melter is going to appear again because we saw him in Fantastic Four. But to find out the answer to the big question, Stark says he never suspected that his melting ray did work against Iron Man, but I wasn't really Iron Man this time. Unknown to anyone, I redesigned my armor, making it entirely out of tough, extruded aluminum. Okay, and so the melter's power only worked against iron. Tony Stark simply changed to a different metal to defeat him. Well, I haven't time to dwell on the past. I've still got a big factory to run and weapons to produce for our defense. It's time for Iron Man to fade away again while Tony Stark takes over. And so he charges in. Stark says, "What's everyone standing around for? The Melter is defeated for now, and we've still got a mess to clean up. Chuck, get the work crew going. Hop to it, man. Pepper, report to my office. We've a lot of dictation to catch up on." "Yes, sir, Mr. Stark." And Happy says, "I don't know when things are worse around here, when we're in big trouble or when everything's back to, normal." All right. Well, that's the end of our saga with the Melter. Next issue, one of the greatest artist and writer teams in comics again join talents to bring you an all-new feature-length Iron Man epic. Don't miss it, and I'm sure we won't. No, we don't want to miss this epic story. It's Iron Man, and the story guest stars the Angel from the X-Men. So we'll have a visitor from one of our favorite teams. That'll be great. A story that takes place up in the air between Iron Man and the Angel. And look, Iron Man has on his new red and gold armor. So we'll learn more about it too. All right, can't wait till next time. Y'all meet me here, okay? Love y'all. Bye-bye.